I mean, he showed so much on this one play that a backup tight end dropped. And then he hit St. Brown for a 21-yard touchdown on a slot fade. Beautiful throw, pace, touch, precise ball location. This kid can throw a football.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It's a teaching tutorial Thursday. That means Greg Cosell class is in session. By the way, a week from tonight, I'll be doing an appearance at Danny's in Orchard Park, a Labatt Blue Light watch party. I'm expecting all of my Western New York peeps, Jan and Steven and everybody to be there. Should be awesome. Love those of you that spread the word via social media. I saw Tim Brown Jr. with the Even Money repost. Tim Walter bought tickets to the Eagles-Vikings preseason game via the Game Time app. You guys both email me, ross@rosstucker.com. I'll give you a little something in the mail. Shout out to Brian Sabino with the awesome YouTube comment. You can get a cameo-style shout-out if you'd like it. Love Zach G, our latest patron, patreon.com/RT Media. Big day with Greg. Last episode of the week. As a reminder, you still have time to go ahead and check out Emery Hunt with his bets against the spread in college football, the 7 biggest games on the College Draft Podcast. You still have time to hear all 4 of Joe Dolan's Tears of Dolan on the Fantasy Feast. You still have time to get in all your season win total bets from Steve Fezzik on the Even Money Podcast. And you still have time to grab a bottle of Smirnoff at your local retailer and head to Smirnoff.com to find recipes of delicious cocktails perfect for game day. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. Love the world's number 1 vodka, and that's an official vodka partner of the NFL. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, Greg, it is always an interesting time, right? We had the final cuts on Tuesday. Then some guys get picked up on waivers and everything yesterday. And we don't have any NFL football games this weekend. We do have college games, which is awesome. I am going to be in Hawaii Saturday night, UCLA at Hawaii, which will be very, very cool to check out that atmosphere and that game. But no NFL games. We did have preseason week 3, though. And I know you got a chance to check out some of these guys, like we check you out on social media at Greg Cosell. I think I want to start with Drake Maye.
Yep.
Because I thought he was pretty darn impressive, during that preseason game. At least some of the clips I saw. I remember last week you described him as uneven against the Eagles. I'm curious to see or hear what you thought of him against the Commanders.
Yeah, and it's funny you asked me that, because when I watch these guys, look, we know that in the preseason, number one, they're not being asked to do a lot. And number two, they're playing against defenses that are not necessarily game planning and doing a lot from a schematic perspective. So for me, and I don't know how other people look at it, I look for sort of the subtleties and the details of the position. What a quarterback like Drake Maye, a young quarterback in his first year, what he's going to have to do in the league to play at a high level, at a starting level. He's the number 3 pick in the draft. So the Patriots expect him, Ross, at some point to be a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the league. That's when you draft a guy number 3. So certain things I look for, like for instance, he hit Polk for 29 yards on an intermediate crosser. What I really like about that particular play was the subtle pocket movement that he showed climbing the pocket. He felt the outside pressure, and he climbed the pocket, and he climbed the pocket comfortably. His knees were bent. He stayed on balance, and then he just ripped the ball. He's such an easy thrower of the football. And keep in mind that that's conventional play action, and by that I mean he had to turn his back to the defense. And that's a learned trait. A lot of college quarterbacks who are always in the gun, they don't turn their back to the defense. And when you turn your back to the defense is not in the same spot when you snap your head around as it was before. So there's that extra added dimension to play action when you're under center. So when I look at quarterbacks in the preseason, I'm looking for the subtleties and the nuances of the position. Now, I think that Maye, and he did this in college, I think he does walk a fine line at times between subtle pocket movement, as I just described, and moving when it's not necessary. And I think that's something he'll have to work through as he continues to develop.
It's funny that there's a lot there. The one thing I was going to say to you is when you talked about his subtle pocket movement, climbing the pocket, I thought I had read, or maybe you had told me, that was actually one of his issues, that maybe he didn't have a great feel for that at times.
Well, and it's funny you say that because a lot of quarterbacks that are mobile, and Maye is, I think, more athletic than he's given credit for. He may not be a playmaker or a creator, but Maye, as he did in this game, by the way, and I think it was on his first drop back, he ran for a first down on 3rd and long, so he can do that. But pocket movement is a different trait than running out of the pocket. And it's really a trait that's very nuanced and subtle, and that's something you really need to practice. Very often, quarterbacks that can't run and can't make plays with their legs are good at it. Tom Brady was a master at pocket movement. For people who remember years and years ago, Dan Marino probably would run a 5.5 40. He was a master at subtle pocket movement. And all you're talking about is moving, whether it's climbing, whether it's sliding, is just moving in a smaller area. I often say the size of a boxing ring, but it's smaller than that, just to find comfortable space in order to deliver the football. That is a really important trait in the NFL.
It's such a good analogy about the boxing ring, because on some level, some of their movement reminds you a little bit of boxers in a ring. Obviously, it's a smaller area than that, but it kind of reminds you of how boxers have to slide around at times and move. Anything else jump out at you about Maye, Greg?
I would say that what, and maybe this is my personal bias because I do like quarterbacks that have good arm strength. He's a very easy thrower, and the ball comes out with really good velocity. There are times he does not necessarily need to have his feet set under him, although you'd prefer that, obviously, if you can. But he really can throw the ball very, very easily. Now, I think he can still be erratic at times with his ball location. That can show up on routine throws. We saw that at North Carolina. I wouldn't call him scattershot, though, overall. I don't think he's one of those guys that is just all over the place. But, in this league, as you know, Ross, you can't miss routine throws.
It's funny, watching that game the other night, I could just think about you calling him the toolsiest quarterback in the draft, because it felt like you saw a lot of tools as you were watching. And what's funny? I mean, it sounds like they might still start Jacoby Brissett in the opener, although Jacoby's got a shoulder injury, and we'll see what happens. They're basically, if they start Brissett, the argument is basically that the offensive line isn't great.
Right.
So they don't want to put Drake Maye out there behind a bad offensive line. If you think about that, that is such an indictment of so many people. I mean, it's an indictment of the personnel people. It's an indictment of the offensive line. On some level, it's an indictment of the offensive line coach, of the coordinators not feeling confident in their ability to come up with a protection scheme.
Yes.
With the guys. I mean, it's really it sounds good until you actually start saying it out loud. Like, really? Like that's bad. Bad for a lot of people that are involved in that process. Let's put it that way. If they really would prefer to start Maye, but they don't want to put him out there behind that line. Let me ask you about another quarterback, and maybe two, because they're kind of or they were on the same team. Will Levis, played for the Titans and talked about how this last preseason game was important. He wanted to feel good about it and went out and played pretty well. What did you see?
Yeah, this game was a perfect example of making sure that Levis was comfortable going into the season because they gave him a lot of simple throws, almost no read throws, and then they ran some conventional play action with basic route concepts like post cross, things that are fairly basic in any coach's playbook. But that's smart because what are you trying to do to get him into the season? You're trying to make Levis feel really comfortable. And by the way, this is a team that has a lot of weapons. It'll be interesting to see when the regular season starts. Obviously, the O-line is different from a year ago when it was among the worst three in the NFL. But Levis looked comfortable. Now, it's funny. I believe he was 7 for 8, and his incompletion came on his last throw. And that was the kind of throw that you don't want to see him make. It was just outside the red zone. It was a 3-man route concept to the wide side of the field, and he was going to throw the ball to Calvin Ridley on the corner route no matter what. And the defense took it away. The corner sunk. It was not the throw. And Boyd was wide open on the sit route underneath. It was a third down play as well. So that was the kind of that's a learning play for Levis, understanding the situation. You're in field goal range. This is what you want in the preseason, Ross. This is the point of the preseason. People might look at this and go, oh my God, he stinks. What's he doing? That's not the point. The point is you want to learn. You played for 7 years? You want to learn in the preseason. You want to be able to have the coach talk to you, coach you, learn from your mistakes, understand the game. This was a great example of situational football where Levis turned it loose on a throw that he shouldn't have, that easily could have been picked off and would have taken points off the board. But other than that, he looked extremely comfortable. And as I said, it was very simple stuff. But you know what? That's okay. You want him to be comfortable.
I didn't want to learn too much, Greg. Otherwise, I wouldn't actually be there for the season.
Right. Well, unfortunately for you, fortunately for Levis, I don't think he's got that issue.
No, I agree. Speaking of learning, by the way, I don't know if you and I have talked about this, Greg, but it's funny because every time I think of this company, I think about you. It's called Future Fan Sports. They're helping little kids become big fans. They have this storybook-led activity box that helps as kids as young as 4 understand football. It is so cool. They sent me one, went through it with my daughters. If you know anyone, I'd say probably ages like 4 to 10 that loves football, you got to get this. It's only $49.99, and you can use the code Ross to get 10% off. We all love learning from Greg every week. Why don't we make sure your kids can learn watching football every week? It's, a week away from the opener now? Your kid could probably be understanding what's going on in the NFL by week 2. The way Future Fans teaches is genius. You won't be disappointed. Go to futurefans.com to learn more. Use the code Ross and unlock a lifetime of memories with a kid in your life starting now. And by the way, after they learn everything, think about how much joy you'll have watching the game with them as they talk to you about football and you drink some Labatt Blue Lights with your child, living life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Okay, Greg, what about the trade for Malik Willis to the Green Bay Packers? Curious, what you thought of Willis over the years.
Yeah.
Probably not a great sign for Sean Clifford in Green Bay, or maybe they just want to make sure they've got multiple options. Your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I've watched Willis coming out of Liberty, and then, of course, I watched him with the Titans. And, you're dealing with a kid that obviously can run. He's got a huge arm. The issue for him, and different coaches will see this totally differently when you speak to them, is he just doesn't see the field really well. He doesn't process it quickly enough. And he gets stuck in the pocket a lot. So, obviously the Titans made the decision. They're probably going to keep just 2 quarterbacks. They have Will Levis and they have Mason Rudolph, who's really strong as a backup quarterback. Obviously can start if need be, as we saw a year ago with the Steelers. But Willis is just... I'm sure that they felt that the advancement in his game and the refinement necessary to play as a starter was just not there. And given the fact that I don't believe they got very much back for him, I think tells you probably how the league saw him. No one sees him right now as a starting quarterback in the league. And I think the tape, when he's gotten an opportunity to play in the regular season, the tape shows you that. Obviously, you and I are not there every day while he's been practicing for 3 years. My guess is, because I have been down to Tennessee, my guess is that shows up in practice pretty consistently as well.
So what I think is interesting there is, on the one hand, you usually think of a backup quarterback as a guy that you feel comfortable without a lot of reps.
Yeah.
Will be able to operate the offense effectively. You think of like a Gardner Minshew or Mason Rudolph, right? Any of these guys.
Taylor Heineke, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that that's Willis, but I also can see him coming off the bench if Jordan Love gets hurt, and running around making some plays and helping the team win the game.
You just hit on the second factor, which a lot of coaches like in a backup quarterback. Some like just what you said, a guy that really understands your offense. You don't have to change anything. But a lot of coaches like a backup quarterback that's in a sense different from your starter and comes in and has to make the defense play totally differently because his skill set adds that extra second reaction outside of structure dimension, which is essentially what Willis can give you.
Couple other young quarterbacks I want to get your thoughts on. I don't think I've asked you yet this preseason about Spencer Rattler. You know, in that same game, I guess, against the Titans, it looked like he was doing some positive things. What have you seen from Spencer this preseason?
Spencer Rattler is one of the most intriguing guys I thought coming out of the draft. To be quite frank, I was surprised that he was a fifth-round pick. And again, I don't know Spencer Rattler, so I don't know if there were other extenuating issues beyond just his tape, which his tape at South Carolina was a little inconsistent and erratic at times. He played behind a fairly poor O-line, by the way. He's a very gifted thrower of the football, Ross. I mean, people may remember he was the number one quarterback coming out of high school in Arizona, heavily recruited, went to Oklahoma, then South Carolina. You know, I'm going to mention a play that is totally lost because it was an incompletion. It was his second dropback of the game, but he showed really strong NFL traits on this play. His awareness not to make a poor decision, progression reading ability, footwork and balance to reset his platform, stepping to his throw, compact delivery with limited range of motion, precise ball location. I mean, he showed so much on this one play that a backup tight end dropped. And then he hit St. Brown for a 21-yard touchdown on a slot fade, beautiful throw, pace, touch, precise ball location. This kid can throw a football. Now, again, I'm not there every day, so I don't know all the other elements, but he can throw a football. He's an easy thrower. He's got a big arm. I'm very curious. I mean, he's obviously not the starter in New Orleans, but I'm curious to see how that progresses.
Ooh, I like that. Almost like some foreshadowing there, Greg. Depends on how well Derek Carr plays, that's for sure. What about, did you get a chance to watch Bryce Young?
Yeah, I did. You know,
does he look better, Greg?
Well, and again, they did a great job. But I thought he did a really nice job. There was just a 13-yard completion to the rookie tight end Sanders on the second play of the game. Thought he did a really nice job because he looked to the boundary fade, but the safety rotated over the top of it. He came back to Sanders on the backside crosser. It was all within structure and timing. You saw the quickness of decision-making, which is his game, and you saw it was really positive. But then there was another play where he got stuck holding the ball where he should have turned it loose, and the result was a sack. I think, look, with the new coach there in Canales, this is another one where I'm intrigued and curious, just like I mentioned with Rattler, although Young's obviously the starting quarterback. But I'm really curious to see what they do with him. I think they'll get him out of the pocket a good amount on designed boot action, which he did in this game. He had Thielen for 21 yards, really well done. Incredibly smart kid, knows how to play, needs to be protected. And again, you can obviously, that's not a profound statement, but some quarterbacks need that more than others. He needs it.
It's interesting you say that, Greg, because it felt like at Alabama, usually they have an awesome O-line, and the quarterback is well protected. Felt like at Alabama, he was under duress a decent amount and had this unique ability.
Yeah.
Almost like Russell Wilson in his prime to kind of find a way to make the play in those situations, and maybe it's just harder to do that in the NFL.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and I
the
think he
D-linemen
does
are
have that
faster.
ability. But he's also smaller. I don't. It's going to be interesting to see if he can do that at a higher level in the league. My sense is, and I could be dead wrong, and hey, if I am, I'll be the first to admit it. My sense is that he will not be a true playmaking quarterback in the league. He'll make plays getting out of the pocket. Most quarterbacks do now. There's very few statues in the NFL now. I mean, because that's not what the college game is giving the NFL. But then there's variations in how we describe quarterbacks that can move. Obviously there are quarterbacks that can move and run for a first down, but then there's quarterbacks that are playmakers on the move. There's varying degrees. There's gradations there. I don't know if Young's going to be a playmaker, but he can get out of the pocket and make plays with his legs and throw it.
Greg, it's going to get real next week. We'll be previewing NFL regular season games that count, including the Chiefs and the Ravens, which will be epic. We'll be previewing it next Thursday morning. I'll be watching it with a bunch of people in Buffalo at a watch party in Orchard Park, New York, a week from the night. So make sure you're checking out my social for that, at Ross Tucker NFL. I'm expecting every one of you in Western New York to be there. Check out Greg as well, at Greg Cosell. Thank you so much, Greg.
Thanks, Ross. Appreciate it.
Great stuff with Greg. It always is. The other great stuff I've been telling you guys about, West Shore Home. Gigantic fan. Do you think I would have them redo 2 of our showers and baths, including my daughter's, unless I knew they were the real deal? Or redo the entry door? If something went wrong with the entry door, if something went wrong with any of that stuff, my wife would kill me. You guys have no idea what my wife's like. That's why I only do this stuff with West Shore Home. And right now, my listeners can get free installation with 48 months, 0% interest, plus an extra $500 off. Just visit westshorehome.com/Ross to redeem. That's westshorehome.com/Ross. At a minimum, you need to check out their design tool with how it looks. It is awesome. westshorehome.com/Ross.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the Steelers, they announced they will be starting quarterback Russell Wilson in their season opener.
Not really a surprise, although I was thinking, today, Jack, or last night, really, maybe that's why Kenny Pickett won it out. Because they said it was a competition. It really wasn't. It was really more like Russell Wilson's the starter, and I think that's what Pickett knew.
There were some trades. The Chargers, they trade for quarterback Elijah Molden from the Titans, and they also get quarterback Taylor Heineke from the Falcons, while Washington, they trade for defensive tackle John Ridgeway. They trade him to the Saints, and then they signed wide receiver Noah Brown.
Well, the Chargers clearly needed an upgrade at backup quarterback. Heineke was no longer needed in Atlanta with Penix Jr. being there. So that makes perfect sense to me for both of those teams. And then I love the signing of Noah Brown for Washington. Smart place for him to go, too. Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to be a star. They just moved on from Jahan Dotson, Jahan Dotson, I should say. So they had an opportunity there for Noah Brown. That seems like a great fit.
So we got some receiver news. Wide receiver Jamar Chase, he does not practice the day after head coach Zach Taylor said he would. Neither does Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco, while the Giants, they unretired the number 1 jersey from Malik Neighbors.
Wow, Malik Neighbors. I mean, talk about putting pressure on yourself. The jersey's been retired for 95 years, and he asks the family, and they let him unretire it. You better make plays if you do that. As for the Ayuk and Chase situations, it's time to really watch those now, Jack, because both teams could decide to start to find these guys. They've kind of let them do the hold-in now for a whole month. They could decide to find these guys, and it could start to really get ugly in both of those situations.
Bunch of other notable transactions. The Bills, they sort of signed quarterback Mike White. Chiefs, they signed running back Samaje Perine. Former Broncos wide receiver Tim Patrick, he signs with the Lions. Dalvin Cook is signing with the Cowboys practice squad. The Bucs, they're placing Chase Edmonds on season-ending IR. Same with the Packers and A.J. Dillon. And the Dolphins cut Jack Driscoll.
The Lions have a pretty darn good-looking practice squad. It makes sense for the Bills to sign Mike White. And I think the most interesting thing about A.J. Dillon is I was not expecting that. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com as well as Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, Human Head NYC, and BackOfficeScheduler.com.